Welcome to Grew with Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course, the best medicine of them all. Reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course, discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to grow with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Grow with Portia. I am your host, Portia Booker, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep up with all things Grow with Portia. You know, one of the things that I've always said is that our stories are not for us. I'm going to say that again. Our stories are not for us. Our stories are to help others and give them permission to share what's going on in their life. Because think about it realistically. How many times have you been in the company of somebody and when you shared something, they opened up, right? It's kind of that mirror effect if you want to think of it in that way. But when we share our stories, it helps us to heal and it helps us to give others that same permission. Let that sink in. So today I have the opportunity of being joined by an individual who I met through actually one of my clients. Shout out to Miss Lisa Council for the introduction. She's a mom. She's also a domestic violence survivor and just an amazing individual. So welcome to Grow with Portia, Miss Kia Wallace. Kia, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Kia, I knew when I heard your story before, and we're going to dive into it shortly. But before we dive into obviously your work, the domestic violence situation that you've been in, I want to take a minute to honor your daughter today. I want to take a minute to let you share with our audience who your daughter was and what do you want people to remember about her?
Thank you. I would definitely love for everyone to know that Jordan was the best part of my life. I'll say I just really am in still a disbelief that she's not here with us. She would have been 18 years old if she would be here with me today. But the biggest thing I really just want everyone to know is that Jordan was a very caring person. So many other children came to me or found me on social media after she passed, and they share different stories. I mean, from her helping them with reading, younger kids in school, to helping with bullying situations. So I really just really I feel so proud that my child was part of that, and that just shows what kind of love was shown through her life, because I really feel like the people that really show that kind of compassion is because it's in them from the people that loved on them. So I really think that that brings me a lot of joy that she stood out to people in that sense, but also too, with her passing and the manner that she did pass, I think it's so important that every single person always realize that anything can happen to us, and we're not exempt from anything happening to us. My daughter passed from a fentanyl overdose at 15 years old. She died April 20th, 2023, and she was, a typical teenager. I really didn't expect for her to take that type of turn in her life. It did happen, but one thing for sure is that I really could say that there's no support for it in that type of situation. So it's been quite interesting the last 3 years just trying to build my own stuff up or trying to figure out, am I the only person who's had a minor child die in this manner in my neighborhood, in my community? What resources are there? I actually had the privilege of participating and testifying for a House bill that was to support getting juveniles treatment and things like that. So it's been a learning experience, but also too, it's been a learning experience for really seeing how we're vulnerable as a people, as a community, and really just learning a lot.
And Kia, first of all, lots of love to you. What a beautiful story and honor and legacy that you're putting forth in Jordan's honor.
Thank you.
I feel like I know her just a little bit that you shared, that compassion, that being the advocate, right? Like mother, like daughter, because you're doing the
Hmm.
same thing, obviously, in the world of domestic violence. And Kia, as I brought up, you've had to navigate both domestic violence and the transition of your daughter, two very highly stigmatized things, domestic violence and obviously your daughter, dying from fentanyl. And when you look back, Kia, what was one of the most difficult lessons you had to learn about grief, survival, and rebuilding your life?
Mm. Wow. I can definitely say that nobody is going to save you. You have to be willing to get up and take every opportunity that comes before you, meaning that it's really a choice. Do you want to choose to be depressed and stuck in your sorrows and what happened to you for the rest of your life? Or do you want to make a purpose out of those experiences? And, I really agree with how you opened up about telling your story, sharing your story of being helpful to someone else. When my daughter died, I was actually in the middle of my domestic violence, kind of, sort of speaking. Um, I had just relocated to be closer with my spouse. I was still legally married to him at the time, and it just did not work out. So I ended up having to move into my own place with my children. I had three kids. And I would say that, I really expected, being that I was closer to my family. I had relocated to Maryland from North Carolina. All my family live in Maryland. So I thought that, hey, I'm going through this with him. He's acting crazy. Somebody's going to help me. Somebody would be willing to let me temporarily stay with them or, give me some support, something. Nothing. I had to do all the footwork on my own. And it created a lot of resentment.
Mm-hmm.
It created a lot of confusion with how I felt about different relatives in my life because you have, really sometimes you really think that people will show up no matter what, um, whether if they're your mother, your father, whatever. But when you're really in those situations, like I was, I came to find out nobody was coming to save me. And I really had to figure this out on my own. And it was super duper hard. When I got into my own place, it was literally starting over scratch. Yeah, and I try to really empathize with people and share with them that, I know that you really hope that, someone XYZ, they would do this for you, but you have to be willing to do it yourself. So that I would say that it brought out a lot of strength that I didn't really see myself having to use or um, didn't know that I actually had. So that was, probably 6 months prior to my daughter passing, when I had to make that transition. So, yeah, I was a fresh single mom. Didn't know that my daughter had kind of got involved with that type of crowd that went to experiment with drugs and things like that. And she actually had overdosed once prior to the time that took her. So I found her the first time and I had to do CPR on her. I had never done CPR on anybody before. So, it was just so crazy to me because while I'm going through that with her, trying to figure out, like, oh my goodness, she's been connected with the bad kids at school, or, I'm trying to, really trying to figure out and work with the school, is making sure, like, she's going to school, trying to make sure she's doing what she's supposed to do. On the flip side, I'm dealing with the financial burden and pressures because now I'm a single parent. My spouse was not helpful, didn't care, wasn't trying to help me out or play games, where, he would send things, DoorDash and stuff to my kids and, things like that without even consulting me. I might have already cooked or something, it was such a chaotic time, I'll say. At the same time, I realized that nobody was coming to save me. So I had to learn to stop really complaining to a lot of people, stop using family and friends as vents because vents just lead to other rooms, and then you'll learn that they didn't told everybody else what you cried to them about instead of really having compassion for you and really looking out in a practical way. But I would say overall, just learning to be transparent and going to the resources. I've taken advantage of all kinds of resources, food pantries. I've had to get help with, utilities, food stamps, you name it. It's nothing that a client that I assist at work has that I've not been in line for myself. And that's what I try to express to them is that, it might not be the most comfortable experience, but hey, you have to do what you have to do to survive and have your dignity and make sure that you and your kids are okay. At least you have your life. You don't have to live under the bondage of abuse and things like that. So, and it may take a while. You might have to, work that low paying job or that whatever job for a while. 'Cause that's why I was a CNA. I did nursing assistant work at a nursing home. My former spouse made me feel inferior because that was the type of work I did. It's nothing wrong with that work. If we all live old enough, we'll end up in the position of needing someone to care for us. So, I just really try to build myself up as much as I can. A lot of self talk, a lot of crying, a lot of affirmations, but also a lot of seeking and finding people just along the way. Along the way, it's been a lot of people that I've ran into um, because last year in particular, I was so down, grieved, just in the aftershock of everything. And I was like, well, I need to start volunteering. So doing things like that, getting out, volunteering more. Then that connected me with other people, other moms who have lost their children in different ways. Sometimes ways kind of similar, sometimes ways totally different, but still at the same time, just finding new friends to make common grounds with and finding new hobbies and new ways to explore. So I think that you just have to be wide open and be creative, because sometimes you have to be. I mean, I think sometimes when we are going through things, we just kind of look at, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then next month, I'm going to do this. My next goal. And more times than not, nothing's going the way how we plan. So you just got to be willing to kind of take one day at a time and roll everything how it goes. That's kind of just how it seemed to play it out for me. But the biggest thing was for me, I could say now, was really just feeling like nobody was caring, nobody. But now I know, especially with domestic violence, especially we see it now. All the people that are suffering, watching people get killed over it and things like that, people don't want to get involved because they're scared or they don't want to, be looked at as the bad guy involved in someone else's relationship and things like that. So I can understand that. And that, I mean, that really helps with, really just understanding that people, it's not always personal, but they just have to keep themselves safe too. So,
When I think, Kia, too, what I'm hearing is number one, through what you've been through, these adverse circumstances, there was a level of strength. There was that, if you call it flotation device, that
mhm,
kept you with that reminder of nobody's coming to save Kia but Kia.
simply.
And so you were essentially able to find some hidden strengths within you. My audiobook is called Finding Grace Within Grief, Her Transition, My Transformation, because that was the
Mhm.
epiphany that I got when I picked up my mom's ashes from the funeral home. Portia, what if your mom's transition is for your transformation? Right. And at first, I'm sitting at the light thinking, I didn't hear that. What does that even mean? But now I see it, even for you, Kia, with your daughter making her transition, you being able to find your way out of that domestic violence situation, even though it was a struggle. Obviously, being a single mother, finding resources, but you did it. And
Right.
then also, you brought up about this level of still the stigma, right? The bystander effect is real in so many
hmm
different situations, and especially in domestic violence. And I'm curious, Kia, for our audience, as we know, we've had several high profile incidents with domestic violence in
Mhm.
this year. Obviously, the incident in Shreveport and also in Virginia.
Yes.
And I'm curious, Kia, based on your own personal experience, what is one of the biggest misconceptions about domestic violence that is often overlooked by people that have never been in your shoes before?
I would have to say that they don't want to leave. Um, I think sometimes people look at them and think that people are happy or, they're not going anywhere. And it's not that they don't want to leave. I think that sometimes they don't understand. Even I remember a couple years ago hearing the story of a mayor, a local mayor around here. She told her domestic violence story at a forum that I was part of, and we were shocked. But people, they don't believe that certain people can go through being a victim. What does a victim look like? It could be anybody, really. So I think that that's the main part. If someone says something happened to them, you have to believe them and validate them and really believe that they did want to get out of that situation. Don't for a second think that, I mean, I know there are levels of, victimhood and abuse where people are traumatized to where they start to really like it, and things like that. But I'm talking about overall, for the most part, if someone's not being treated well by their spouse or their significant other or whoever, they want to leave. But because their life looks a certain way, or they may have money or things like that, because like that mayor who shared her story, they try to say that, it's no way she could be abused and she really had nobody to turn to because if she called the police, they were all literally her employees and stuff like that. And are they really going to believe her, because of the rapport they had with her husband, are they really going to believe he was beating her up and things, so it gets complicated. It really does. But mainly it could be anybody. I think that's the biggest misconception. And that also holds people back from speaking up. Because men, for example, that's a big one. Men that are abused, a lot of them don't speak up because they don't believe that they'll be validated or believed. So
Well, they'll be ostracized by
that
society
too, yeah,
because
yeah.
depending on the generation, you figure men who were
Hmm.
obviously part of either boomer and
Right.
before, they were raised by parents who said, you suck it up, man up. And you're seeing more of a shift in some men who are more conscious parents that are working to try to reduce that in their sons, where their sons are
Mhm.
more comfortable and vulnerable about what's going on, what hurts, what doesn't make sense. And Kia, before we continue with the conversation, if our audience wants to connect with you, obviously get a copy of your book, if you have any upcoming events, how can our audience connect with you today, Kia?
Sure. So you can connect with me. I'm on Facebook as Kia Wallace. Or you can email me, and my email address is Kia, KIAW at 1012 at iCloud.com.
Excellent. So, for our audience, I would definitely put Kia's email address in our show notes. So, if you want to reach out to her, obviously, get a copy of her book. You're more than welcome to.
Oh yes,
Kia,
my book is poetry, and I'll share that link with you if you don't have it. But it's just affirmations of healing, just daily thoughts that I literally use to keep myself going, and some poetry that I've created.
well, and Kia, I noticed too that when I listened to your conversation with Lisa, one of the things I also know is that you do spoken word. And when I think about your story of losing Jordan, also your surviving domestic violence, I think
Mhm.
about how your voice was silenced and how spoken word has been this, if you want to call it, door opening for you to express. I'm curious, Kia, when did you notice you had that gift of spoken word? And what is one, if you want to call it, poem or symbol that really speaks to who you've become through these different adverse circumstances?
Hmm. Well, that's a lot right there. That's a nice question, though. When I first started my job as a domestic violence advocate, one of their fundraisers that they do to raise money for our RDV victims is a poetry night. And so that October, they did it October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I decided to step outside the box and participate because this was the first year that I mean, I had been separated from my spouse for a couple of years at that time, but this was where it was solidly over. And I felt like I was really stepping into a new form of me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make myself super uncomfortable and I'm going to go up here and perform because I used to always write poetry, just scribble, scrabble on paper and things like that growing up. And even as a child, but I didn't want to tell my mom something or I was upset, I would write her a letter or write her a note. And my daughter would do the same thing with me, Jordan. And I found a notebook full of things she had wrote after she had passed in her bedroom. So it was kind of like a little bit of why not? And a little bit of just living a little bit because I'm sure that Jordan would be tickled if she would have seen me up there on stage doing it. And I've done it every year since. And so and it was receptive, you know, everybody was like, wow, you got up there and did that, like my coworkers and stuff. So it's been a cool experience and it's been new because it's something that I did not do in my former life. And I joke with people, and I'm like, I've done lived 10 lives now, because I'm like, one of my former lives, I did feel silence. And like I mentioned, kind of in the discussion with Lisa, I feel like a bulk of my domestic violence situation was impacted by religion. And, we were Jehovah's Witnesses. And, I'm not here to disprove that religion. You be whatever religion you want. I can only speak on my experiences and what I saw and what I witnessed. And I would say that it was very influential towards me being treated badly. And I felt like I was silenced because women have a certain position in that religion, and women have a certain position in those marriages and those relationships, the financial abuse and things like that. Not really having a say of how certain things are spent, so I felt like that was just another step of just coming into my own independence, and just being free of all that. I don't have to go through all that anymore. And probably if I was still in that relationship, that would be an event I would be discouraged from attending, because the potential of being around other men or whatever. So it's just cool to be able to do whatever I want and enjoy my life how I want.
Well, and essentially live the abundant life
Yeah,
that you know that you deserve. And
exactly.
that's a conversation for another day, Kia, about the influence of religion on keeping people imprisoned and incarcerated in certain situations. I'm not going to go there today, but
hmm
I do know that that is a conversation that has been coming up a lot on social media in the last couple of years.
It has been.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody, that was Miss Kia Wallace that you heard from today on Grew with Portia. And that concludes our conversation. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.